You want Lynn or Dr. Morski?
Not Lynn Marie, but you don't have to call me anything. You can just say glad to be here.
Okay.
Winners never quit, and quitters never win.
Quitters win all the time. Let us show you how on Quit Happens.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the first official episode of the Quit Happens podcast. I'm Lynn Marie Morski, coming to you from San Diego, California. Today, I have with me my friend Jeremy Castellano, lead brewer and head of quality assurance at Mission Brewery, which is one of San Diego's oldest and largest breweries. Hey, Jeremy, thanks for being with us today.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, you're one of the first people that came to mind when I started this podcast because I love your quitting story. If you could give the listeners just a bit of background on your first career and how you got there.
All right. Well, my father's an accountant, so it was kind of a natural fit for me. Growing up, seeing the kind of work he did, I would go to the warehouse with him or see how he interacted with people, maybe help him out with filing or scanning or shredding papers. And as I grew older, he kind of taught me more and more about business, would bring me along to business conferences, discussions, meetings with people. So I learned a lot of business firsthand from him. As a result, I went into college, and I was originally a math major because I was really good at math. It came naturally. And then I started doing the numbers and looking at what kind of career math majors can give you, and found out that math majors actually don't make much money. So that quickly led me to pursue other things that were also math related, but maybe a little more advantageous to my pockets. And I stumbled upon accounting, which after taking a class or two realized was A, very logical and intuitive to me, and B, could have a very prosperous career. So at this time in my life, money was a very big priority. I guess that's, in a way, a lot of us, how we get from growing up. We see the stars in Hollywood, the rich people with their great lives, and we think, oh yeah, this would be great to have filet mignon every week and have a nice car and stable household, the American dream kind of thing. So went through college, graduated with my bachelor's in accounting, quickly got an internship my sophomore year at an accounting firm, went back my junior year for another internship, and had a job in the bucket by the end of my junior summer. So once I graduated, I just jumped right into this career, moved down to San Diego, quickly excelled, went from entry-level accountant to manager, getting promotions every 2 or 3 years, and was sitting pretty stable at manager until I decided that although I knew from the whole time I was not wanting to do this job forever, that was the point in time where I decided I need to quit now if I'm going to quit ever and do something different that I'm more passionate about, more interested. And then I ended up in the wonderful weird world of brewing beer.
So how did you first realize that I know you said you knew you were not going to be in accounting forever, but what gave you the signal that a quit should be in the near future?
So right when I started, I'd say as a staff accountant, the first 2 or 3 years, I realized it was a really neat job. I was learning a lot about the intricacies of finance and companies and all those aspects. But I was also working during many times of the year, 55 to 65-hour weeks. That was expected from early to mid-January through late April, early May, with random sporadic weeks in between. And I quickly realized that that was not something I was going to be able to do for the rest of my life. It was tough enough for me as a person and for my health to start with. And having this go through my entire career, I realized just wasn't going to happen. One example was I was once talking to one of our partners, and she noted that she would tell her kids, or her kids knew, that from January through May, they just might not see mom at night. Wow. During the weekdays. And I mean, not that I have any desire to have kids myself, but in the same way, that mentality was not something that I could sign up for myself.
Yeah, understandable.
And then also I knew as a person, I was interested in potentially being an entrepreneur, starting my own business. And so I recognized that while I had a great amount to learn and benefit from this occupation, seeing how other people ran their businesses, it might not be the best fit for me to be long-term. Instead, I would take what I could from it.
Now, when you realized it was time to quit, what were some of the first steps you took?
So the first thing I decided when I was going to quit was essentially that I was going to quit. So as I said, even from my second year in the job, essentially, I didn't really have a desire to be there forever, but I had always told myself I would stay in this job until I wasn't learning anything anymore or something else caused me to leave. So 7 years later in the job, I got to the point where I was still learning some stuff, but I had other personal factors that made me realize I had to leave, such as I developed an extreme passion in home brewing, and the whole concept of running a brewery, brewing beer, the production aspect, the hands-on aspect of creating something and being able to serve it and seeing people enjoy it. I became uncomfortable with certain aspects of my company's operations just because we also did taxes, and so we would help lots of people, what one might call cheat on their taxes, what other might call game the system properly. Completely legal things, but in a moral way, I knew I was connected to it. And so that also caused me to reevaluate my connection to the company as a whole in that industry. And then just, I guess, personal growth as a person, realizing that I only had so long to live and it was pointless to continue chasing down a path that I knew I didn't want to be at the top of. So, I mean, why keep climbing the ladder if you realize it's not the direction you want to go and you should actually be climbing a different ladder?
So at that point, did you have any fears about quitting?
I had a lot. One of the biggest fears I had, which was luckily solved by some legislation, was not having health insurance. So I had family members and known people who had or who needed significant medical care. And at the time, they weren't able to get cheap or adequate health insurance. And I saw the suffering they went into and the amount of debt they incurred. And I was comfortable with my nice little $20 copay for all the services I could need healthcare with this large financial firm. And so I was really scared that I was going to quit and have to pay, $200 a month for just basic care for myself. Luckily, Obamacare passed, which gave me some comfort in knowing that I could find health insurance in the marketplace. But that was circumstantial. Obviously, if that hadn't passed, I still probably would have quit. But it gave me one less obstacle and helped solidify my decision that, yes, I can do this without this company. Other things were beyond this being a job that I was good at and succeeded at. It was also extremely financially stable. I could have stayed there for 4 or 5, 6 more years, potentially been a partner, bought into the company, and had, $150,000 plus salary each year. That kind of stability is, really nice. It's what a lot of people pursue in their lives. They can buy a house, they can vacation all they want, but at the same time, can you vacation all you want if you have to work 60 hours for it?
Right.
Is it really a vacation in a way?
Now, as you decided to leave this, potentially 6-figure one-day earning job, what was the thought process that your family and your friends, were they supportive? Did they question your decision?
So for the longest time, my closest friends and my dad, who I talked to a lot with these kind of things, understood that I was stressed with my current job, that it was making me unhappy, that it was potentially taking a toll on, if not my bodily health at the hours, my emotional health as well with stress. I would have like a slight tinnitus, but I would get more severe tinnitus when I was working really stressful jobs. And I had certain bosses who would just cause a lot of stress for me as a whole. So once I started talking about the quit with them, I got a lot of support from them, especially a new community I had, which is Capoeira and Afro-Brazilian martial arts. Really a new community I had gotten into with very supportive people from various backgrounds, everything from doctors and lawyers to medical health practitioners to photographers to programmers to office people, the entire spectrum. And so seeing all these successful people from different areas in the same community group allowed me a lot of support for me pursuing something else. This all culminated in a way I was considering seriously doing this quitting. And just one day after class, walking with a friend and saying, I really want to quit my job. I'm sick of it. I've been talking about it for years. And she said, why don't you just quit? And just having someone, for some reason, that just blank question of, you should quit, you should do it, come on, do it. And just validating all the thoughts and personal feelings I had was extremely helpful. And I said, yeah, you're right. I really do need to do this. So as part of that, I started planning when I was going to do the quit. I know a lot of people, they might be in a toxic situation where they need to get out of this job immediately, whether it's, a dire life and death thing or it's something abusive, whatever the situation is. I was luckily in a place where I could take my time and really think about how I could set myself up for success post-quit, which was, for me, someone who likes to have things organized and, have a plan for everything was extremely important.
So how long was it between when you decided to quit and when you actually quit?
So I would say I probably decided to quit around March or April of the previous year, and I quit around January 14th or 15th of that following year. So almost 9 to 10 months.
And had you preset that quit date ahead of time?
I did in a way. So because of the cyclical nature of my industry, like I said earlier, we get into our busy season around mid-January through mid-April. And I had gotten through a busy season, so it was March or April. I was at least at the tail end of it. And I said, I can never do this to myself again. This is horrible for my mental health, horrible for my personal health. But if I've made it through this and the rest of the year is relatively easy coasting, then okay, I can do this for another 10 months and then I will stop before I get into this again. And it was important for me to stop before we got back into our busy season out of also respect to the company. I didn't want to start, go mid-March or April and then leave everyone out to dry when they're expecting to have someone who's working 55 hours a week. It didn't seem fair to them, and it's not something I would be comfortable with. So I knew that means I would miss out on the bonus, which was purposely paid out in the middle of busy season to prevent people from quitting before busy season. Very smart of them. But that was a non-negotiable thing for me, which I decided I'm going to quit January 15th, and there's nothing anyone can say to keep me here. So I'll come back after New Year's, give it my 2 weeks, and do that way.
Nice. I like that you specifically pointed out one of the things that I have always stressed in the timing of quitting, which is quit in the way that leaves whomever or whatever situation you're quitting in the least trouble. Quitting in the middle of busy season, would have been much worse for them than quitting before. So that's something I like, everybody take note of, is the timing is important. And I think everybody you struck something else before that, which is super accurate, is that you had the option to time out your quit in a certain way. And like you said, if you're in a life or death situation or an abusive situation, don't wait till it's convenient for the other person. You do it what your mental health and your physical health and your safety needs to do. But if you do have the luxury of time, it is a good idea because, in life, we don't want to burn bridges if we don't have to, or cause any animosity if we don't have to, or cause people to be in a worse situation. So that's a great point to bring out, is that wait for an opportune time if you can, if you have
Certainly,
that luxury.
If you have the ability to. And yeah, burning bridges. I mean, I never knew, maybe this career wasn't going to work out for me. And for some reason, I needed to jump back into accounting for a year or 2 years. That seemed a horrible idea to me, but I didn't want to burn those bridges. Or you still need a letter of recommendation for your new job. Who knows if those contacts are going to pop up somewhere else in your life. It's pretty much never beneficial, in my opinion, to burn bridges. So I wanted to make sure I kind of left everyone on the right foot.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, after you decided to quit, was there any, pushback from anybody? Did anybody question your decision?
So yeah, once I did actually quit and start pursuing this new career path, overall, my closest friends were very supportive. They understood what was going on. My mom did tend to question a lot. I would get the question like, but you had such a stable job, or, you were such in a good career. Why would you do this? And over time, she's actually seen the other side of it. She's seen the change in my appearance, my health, my happiness, and understood that it's really not worth the money. And it's been much better for me in the end. But I did, and I kind of expected that pushback, I think, in the end. But being confident that I was doing what I knew was right for myself was the most important part. And I think, whenever you're quitting something, there's going to be some people who disagree with you. So being confident that it's for yourself and in your own best interest, and just sticking with that and going head on straight forward, I think is really important.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I bring that up often. Now, relatives are closer to you than the average person whose opinion we may be concerned about. So many people, that's who they're concerned about. What are my parents going to think? Or what is my spouse or partner or my kids going to think if I quit? But like I point out so many times, like, while your mom is concerned about that, especially as a mom, that's often her job, is to feel concerned about what her kids are, and you're an only child, right?
Yes.
What her only son is up
Yeah.
to. But that's what's important to realize, is that, she spends whatever amount of her day concerned, but then she has to go back and, deal with her own life. And you're the one who's stuck dealing with your own physical and mental and emotional health. And so, like you said, when you know what's best for you, that's the key to getting over. I think a lot of us fear what other people may or may not be thinking. And it may not just be that we fear that they may be, like you said, your mom may have been expressing it to you. But it's just really crucial to keep the path, because if people like your mother or your spouse, your family member, if they do love you and they want what's best for you, they will, like you said, eventually come around and see
Definitely
that this new path, like I I am one of the people in the Afro-Brazilian capoeira community that Jeremy speaks of, and you can see a complete change in, like your ability to practice more and be more fit and spend more time in capoeira because you're not spending 55 hours a week. Mm-hmm. We were all there through your transition where you had to spend a long time, in beer university, or I forget what it was called, but
beer university works.
Yeah,
I like that.
But now that you're in the job and you're doing it, and we secondhand get to benefit because we tend to have parties over at Jeremy's, and he has his own home brewed beer and kombucha that he gets to, like he said, share with all of us. So it's just been a very cool transition for us to watch.
And like you were saying, the decision to quit was really important for me. And I think more so than just the decision to quit was, in a lot of ways, verbalizing the decision to quit. Because lots of times we say, I need to quit my job. I should quit my job. I'm sick of my job. When am I going to quit this? And then you say you're going to quit. But then once you tell someone else you're going to quit, and I've seen people recommend posting this on social media or telling your friends and family, that beyond just telling yourself you're going to quit, once you put it out there to someone else, you're kind of held liable in a way.
Yeah, the accountability factor.
The accountability factor is very important to that whole process. And so I think being able to verbalize it to other people, just saying, hey, I'm going to do this. And then you'd be surprised how much support you get on the back end once you do say that. And then it makes it even easier to just keep going along your path.
That's a great point. Because not only can they support, but when you let them know what you're quitting for, a whole new network may appear.
Certainly.
People who had connections at different breweries. We live in San Diego, which is like the craft beer capital of
definitely the
at
US
least California.
Right now.
But yeah, I was hoping the whole US. I didn't want to overstep our bounds, but
it's arguable, but
yeah,
I'd argue
not that you're biased, but,
yeah.
But yeah, like once you put that out there and people appreciate knowing what other people are going through and kind of that sense of, not that it's super vulnerable, but there's a vulnerability in it. Like, hey guys, I'm giving up the super stable financial life I had and I'm going for it. And I think that people want to root for you at that point.
Definitely. And people like rooting for the underdog in a way. And they also, if they're your friends and they're invested in you, they'll probably see that, hey, this is actually a good thing for them. And so they're happy for you. And yeah, they're going to give you that support, which is going to make everything so much easier.
Yeah. So like I said before at the beginning, as a finance guy, you've had some of the most strategic planning as far as the quit goes in the financial realm. So if you could share a little bit of how you prepared your finances and then also tell the listeners about the trip that you took in between.
Mm-hmm. Okay, definitely. So yeah, obviously one thing I knew from the start that I was going into this brewing career was that brewing does not pay well. Everyone knows this. You brew beer because you love what you do. You don't brew beer for the money. Even the people running some of the biggest breweries in the county aren't really making that much. So typically, entry-level people are making minimum wage. And then if you'll get lucky, you might get $15 to $20 an hour until you're quite high up. So I knew coming from a job where I was making, somewhere between $85,000 and $100,000, that it was going to be a very big change in my personal financial outlook. So I had a few things that I knew. I knew I was going to have to survive on less. So first, what did I have that was non-negotiable? I loved where I lived. For me, I have like this nice house with a backyard that I'm renting, and not having that would be a huge hit on my ability to play with my dog, to have people over, which is, something I really enjoy. I go out there to garden, to relax. So in a way that would save me money versus if I had an apartment where I couldn't utilize an outdoor space, which might lead me to going out drinking somewhere or spending money in another way. So I knew, okay, I can't cut my funding here. So what other things could I do to lower my bills? And what would I essentially have to survive on versus what I have right now? So first, I essentially started tracking my expenses very thoroughly because you can't really make adjustments to your expenses if you don't know where you're putting your money and where your money's coming from. So at first, I tried to live on half a paycheck. And that was just more of an empirical thing versus, and some people, if they can, maybe they should put half their paycheck into savings right away and then try to live off half in a checking account. I was able to use software and whatnot to see if I was living on half of my expenses, buy cheaper groceries, eat in more, dine out less, maybe homebrew more beer instead of buy more beer, or party less or drive less. So all those things I did to kind of figure out, okay, what can I survive on? And eventually, and through this process, actually, I was pocketing into my savings all this money I was saving. So it was allowing me not only to build up a little savings nest egg to weather the storm between quitting my job and how long it would take me to get started on my new career path, but it's also practicing my transition for having less money to live on, period. So, I mean, I would say do everything you can in general as financial advice. If you could live on half your earnings, you're going to be in great shape by the time you retire. If the rest is going towards savings or retirement account or investments. So I just kept whittling that down, living on as little as possible and getting used to a new normal. Because a lot of us have that lifestyle inflation where you get a raise and then that's your new baseline. And then you get a raise and that's your new baseline. And it doesn't have to be like that. You were probably happy to start with. So why not just spend that amount? So that was huge for me. And it allowed me to create this sort of nest egg, which I then used post-quit to travel a little bit. I'm personally very adverse to debt, so I didn't want to take on any debt, and I knew I had to go to brewing school, essentially, which is a relatively new thing, but we had a certificate program at the UCSD, University of California, San Diego, that I was able to enroll into. I was a little behind. I wasn't going to be able to start right away, but I was determined. I made some phone calls. I found a way. And I knew that if I was going to make this transition, I'd do 100% what I could to transition quickly, to get it out of the way, and to start this new career of mine. So that kind of the most important part, I think, for me was getting used to a new financial normal and taking the time while saving money to get used to that so it wasn't such a shock the second I quit my job. And if I was out of the market for what ended up being almost a year between travel and education, I still had enough money saved that I could live for that year without going broke.
Nice. Yeah, I recall that year. You went to Southeast Asia, India for...
Yes. So, yeah, I quit January 15th. And then I think February 3rd or something, I jumped on a plane, went to Southeast Asia for a month, and then India for a month. Came back, and 2 weeks later started my brewing program at UCSD. And so then I took as many classes as I could. It was a program designed for working adults. So theoretically, it should take you 2, 3, maybe 4 years doing a class a semester. And I decided, no, I'm just going to get this done as fast as possible. So I did probably 4 classes a quarter, got through the program in a year and a quarter. So probably the fastest that was foreseeably possible, because some classes I would have been double booked, and got it done super fast. And so that spent a lot of time studying beer. So like I said, I went 100% into it. So when I was at home, I would brew test batches, small brewing stuff, trying to just bump up that resume for a career that I wasn't yet qualified for. No one wants to hire a brewer who's an accountant. So having something that could kind of give myself a little more repertoire, learning soft skills like how to solder things and weld things and things that are useful because stuff breaks in a brewery and you need to know how to fix things. So just building up those other parts of my resume. And then by, I would say, end of December, so essentially a year after I'd quit, I said, all right, it's time to apply for a job in the industry. Went out and got one on my second interview.
And that was while you were still in school.
I was still in school. I think they saw that drive. They saw the soft skills I had and my desire and commitment to work really hard. I mean, I've always been something instilled from my grandfather and my father has been just, we work really hard, we do our job, we don't complain. And that's helped me through every single career. If I had been a slacker and tried to do this quit, I don't think much would have happened in the end. I just would have quit my job and then not pursued anything. So without this strong desire in the pursuit, plus I would say the support of friends to actually have the courage to do it, I probably wouldn't be where I am.
Yeah, you hit on something that's really important there. A lot of people want to go from one career to another that's completely different. And you may have been really successful in the first career. Like you said, you're on the partner track, essentially. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of a hit to the ego when you go to apply for that next job and they're like, we don't care about your big shot accounting background. What do you know about hops? And so that's a great message for everybody is that, okay, since you don't have anything on your resume, what can you show? And it's essentially you found a way to show like, this is what I do at home. This is, I am eating and sleeping brewing at my house. And I forget where in there, because I remember you won some kind of competition.
Yeah, I got second place at the National Homebrew Competition for one of my recipes. And that certainly helped to be able to say, hey, all this work has gone into something and look what I can show for it.
Yeah.
not
That's
just
great.
brewing crappy beer at home.
Right.
I care enough to brew good beer.
Yeah, I think that's huge, especially for the beer. Brewing is kind of an interesting intersection of things because it's both an art and a trade. I think a lot of people want to go from accounting to like painting, which is just more of a pure art. It's very subjective. But even then, like then paint on your own and apply for whatever competitions you want, or photography. There are so many photography competitions out there. Just enter some, like you said, just something that shows that the work you do at home is not only being done, you're actually doing something at home, but also that it's of quality. And you've got some kind of, resume behind you. That's a great technique to bridge that. I started off at nothing. Yeah. I had the same, back when I was in law school, I was still practicing medicine, but I started to get into election reform. And this is like 2011, I think. And I saw Fair Vote, which is an organization that promotes ranked choice voting. And I was really into ranked choice voting. And they had an internship. And I went to apply for it. And they're like, well, what's your legislative background? I was like, I'm a doctor. Like, I had no background at all. Like, I'd done a decade's worth of study in one field that they're like, and that helps us how? So I totally get where you're coming from. And at the time I didn't have any, I was like, yeah, I can't really election reform at home. But yeah, had I thought about it, I should have been, volunteering at local things, any kind of small way to get experience. And that brings up another question I have for you. Like, was there any difficulty with kind of because I remember the days that you were working one of those first jobs in brewing, and I think there was some like 3 a.m. or 5 a.m.
Certainly.
Something crazy different from accounting.
Uh-huh.
And what was it like to essentially, was there any kind of struggle with ego at that point?
I think the whole process required me to throw my ego out the door anyway. Going from manager to essentially being the smallest person on the bottling line. Instead of managing a team of 8 accountants on a multi-million-dollar engagement, I was taking bottles off a packaging line and putting them in boxes and taping them. Or, ensuring the glue pumps onto the labels properly and cutting up my fingers doing manual labor. Like, there was so much just, dissolution of ego required in order to get to that point that luckily it kind of wasn't a huge deal for me. When you were saying kind of things you could do, say an internship or whatnot, it's important, and I was able to do this with my previous job, was anything I could do while still being employed there that's going to help my future job was great. Reading brewing books, home brewing. If you wanted to do an internship, you might be able to do that on the side after hours of your normal job. So it's not like the work only had to start after I quit my job. You could be laying that groundwork. The second I decided to quit, I'd already been laying the groundwork for, okay, what am I going to do afterwards? And how can I get myself in a good position now for later? And that also made that 10-month lead up to the quit more bearable, because I was already doing stuff personally that was satisfying an itch and kind of building on something that I was eventually going to go forth with.
So you bring up a good point. Once you decided to make that quit, when you started that 10-month timeline that led to the ultimate quit, when you finally made that decision, I'm going to quit, what did your mental state do at that point?
It was very liberating, very freeing. The first question was, can I really do this? Because I decided it was going to happen. And you're like, all right, it sounds good. But then you start questioning, oh, wait, like, is this feasible? Am I really going to be able to have a job? And a lot of it was just confidence. So it was relieving to say, yes, in 10 months, I'm going to be done with this. And I'm not going to have to quit Capoeira for 3 months during busy season. And I'm not going to have this horrible, 55, 60, 70-hour weeks. So that was very liberating as a whole. And then I kind of used that extra energy and redirected it into my passion I was pursuing, which also I would say it probably made me a little more relaxed at work, realizing that in the end it really didn't matter in a lot of ways. So I could be getting stressed over an email I got from my boss or a talk we had or something that went wrong. But really in the end, like, okay, well, this is my career for 10 more months, and I'm not going to half-ass my career. That's not something I would do, even if I'm almost out of it. But at least I could mentally just say, okay, it's all right. Don't stress.
Not so attached to the outcomes anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah, I've always suggested to people when they're considering whether or not to quit, decide to quit. Just make that decision and then check in with your mindset. Like, oh, do you suddenly feel really free? and liberated, like you said, that's probably a really great sign that that's the right path for you. If you decide you want to quit and then you suddenly feel like a longing for that job you just pretend quit, maybe you should say. And I think it's a great, test to decide what the next plan of action should be. So I love that you had that initial shift. And you're right. Like once you make that decision, often just you're living into the future. We all live into the future essentially anyway. Like, are we looking forward to that trip next week or, and, you had something to look forward to 10 months ahead, but you're right. It takes a lot of the stress out. And I think that's what's really cool about what you mentioned, which is kind of the slow quit. I kind of see it as like the ramp down, ramp up, which is what you did. You didn't slowly quit, but you had a quit plan, but you were ramping up at the same time, adding, your home brewing and things like that. And in today's work from home world, it's really easy for a lot of people, depending on what they want to get into, to have a side hustle, essentially, that they do before work, after work, on their lunch hour, because working remotely, I mean, you can't really remotely brew beer. That yours is a very specific, but, during your lunch hour, you can read up on brewing, etc. And that's just a great way to kind of save that sanity while you're working toward the quit.
Definitely.
Because it's all about, at the end of the day, happiness. And nobody's saying, okay, you need to quit tomorrow and that's going to suddenly make you happy because like you said, you're not going to be happy with zero financial stability.
Yeah.
So it's great to find ways that while you're quitting, I mean, first off, just the knowledge that you're going to be out of it at some point, like you said, will probably going to make the situation
a lot better.
Yeah, a lot better. And then doing what you love in the interim also kind of boosts that happiness. So it's a good way to both save your sanity from not being poor on the street, but not sticking with that 50, 60 hours a week of stress that you had before. And I wanted to bring this up at the beginning when you mentioned it. One of the things I often talk about in trying to decide if you should quit is like listen to your body and what it's telling you. And I love that you brought up, what did you call it? Tinnitus?
Tinnitus.
Okay. The doctors call it tinnitus, and I don't know why. Yeah, I know. So I didn't want to misquote you. But essentially, for those of you who don't know what either of those are, it's ringing in the ears.
Yes.
And it's a symptom that I had not had somebody else mention before. So I'm glad that you brought that up because you and I had never talked about that.
No.
But it is definitely, I've had it before too, and it gets significantly louder and more annoying when you're stressed or haven't slept or dehydrated, any of those kind of like cortisol pumping out states.
Yes, certainly.
And I love that you had recognized that.
Mm-hmm. Still something I noticed, like, you notice your body responds to certain, things differently. And for stress levels, when I had a lot of stress, it became unbearable. And that would especially happen during this busy season, working 60 hours a week. And then I'm trying to get sleep, but I can't sleep well because I have ringing in my ears and just confounds all these factors. And then you're groggy the next day. So your overall mood is horrible. So it all just builds on itself. And if your body's telling you something's wrong, something's probably wrong, and you should pay attention to it. Yeah.
I always say it starts off whispering, and then it doesn't whisper for so long. And, by the time it's shouting in your ear, then it may be past time to quit. At that point, like you said, you've already suffered some hit into, insomnia. You might have insomnia, or at that point, once you have insomnia, you probably have some, not maybe if not full on depression, but some level of mild mood altering, not toward the positive because you're getting poor sleep, et cetera, et cetera. So it's just like you said, a downhill spiral. And that's where strategic quitting comes in, because you have to first recognize I'm on a downhill spiral and you have to find a way to stop it without doing more harm than good. Like I said, nobody just up and quitting with no plan, ending up homeless is, maybe you're homeless and happy, but overall that is not a safer situation for the most part.
No, not at all.
No. So like the way that strategic quitting comes in is to find a way to strike a balance between, saving your health now and preserving it through the quit so that you come out in a healthier place at the end. Mm-hmm. I think you're just a great example of how that worked. I'm very privileged to have seen I was not the person he talked to who said to quit, in case anybody was wondering. I actually don't know who that is.
It's Pangenia, a friend of ours named Anna. One night.
Nice. Well, yeah, I was like, he's not just putting in a plug for me and my great quitting counseling skills. Other people have the powers. But, I loved seeing your journey because it's been like a complete transformation. And I just had so much respect for the fact that, you quit, you planned it, then you did what you needed to do. You said, I'm going on a trip. I'm going to, kind of just like a fresh slate start, get that stress out of there, and then just worked so diligently. And now tell them a little bit about your path with Mission.
Okay. So now at Mission, so I started as, like I said, bottom of the line, but I think largely due to that strong work ethic I mentioned from my dad, my grandpa, and whatnot. And the fact that I was in this occupation, not because I just wanted a paycheck or I thought beer was cool, but because it's actually something I really wanted to do. I had enough experience doing something you didn't want to do for money, and now I was doing something I wanted to do not for the money. And that just completely changed how I worked and how I felt. And I think that came through. So I went from back of house, what we call like packaging essentially team, and then kind of found every opportunity I could to learn a little more and a little more, to improve processes, do what I could. Quickly, less than 6 months later, ended up on the brewing side, what we call the hot side or wort production, where we make the beer and ensure it ferments properly. And then through that time, I graduated from the program, pursued every little piece of knowledge and used all of that into making our brewery better, our processes, speaking up where I could, occasionally probably stepping on some toes because I saw things could have been done better and I didn't think someone was doing a bad job. I just more so cared about what is now kind of one of my things, which is quality assurance. I really cared about the quality of our beer and making sure we did things right and made sure we made clean, consistent beer. And that benefited to the point where I went from brewer to lead brewer when there was an opportunity. And now I've kind of founded and I'm heading our quality assurance and lab department, which is kind of that true part of my passion, combining science plus the art plus the hands-on labor into making good beer that really I can share with people. I mean, with accounting, in the end, your client, it's kind of, you're just giving them a financial statement. So the controller is who you talk to and the company's paying you, but it's just like, okay, here's your financials at the end. You'd maybe present to the board of directors. And that's way different than making something from scratch with your hands, seeing it through completion and giving it to someone and watching them say, hey, this is a really good beer, or smiling while they drink it, or just, that making something for someone. It's like when you cook dinner for someone and it's just a really delicious dinner. Or if you paint a picture for someone out of the kindness of your heart or draw something. It's that making something for someone else that's tangible that really just makes me happy. So I'm happy I was able to pursue that and be where I am now.
Very cool. Well, you've given us so much to think about. I really appreciate you sharing your story and all the aspects of it and the great, especially the financial advice, because that's solid financial advice. Like if I had to quit, that's the first thing I would do. All right, Jeremy says, figure out how to live on half my salary. Do you remember this? You said you use software. I was going to ask.
Yes, Quicken is my personal. I've tried other things. There's one that's on your phone, but I found that having an app on my computer it'll download some transactions from your financial institutions. Sometimes you have to go on the website and manually enter them. But having something visual like that you can do reports, that you can categorize your expenses. That way you're honest with yourself. You can't be like, oh yeah, I only spent like $20 dining out. And then you like look at the cold hard figures and you're like, ooh, that was a lot of money last month. Maybe I don't need to go eat at Buca de Beppo's 3 times a week. So things like that, just forcing you to actually see where you're spending your money. I think, Quicken, but there's other options out there, some freer, but I think for the investment, it was maybe $20 or $30. It's definitely worth it.
Very cool. All right. I had wanted to ask you about that because I want to give as many concrete tips as we can. Excellent. Thank you, Jeremy, for joining us. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in to Quit Happens. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.